pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. Kelly, would you please let the record show that we are all present? I'm going to move on to the approval of the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as submitted.
Support.
We have a motion and support. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we're going to move on to the approval of the agenda. We do have one addition tonight, and I think you all know about it. It's a resolution to approve the Transportation Reimbursement Program application. I'd like to add that as E and under new business.
Motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Support. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we're going to move on to the announcements. Anyone have any announcements to make tonight?
We do have an election tomorrow in Lyon Township for Precinct 7 only, which is Northville Schools. So the polls open tomorrow 7 a.m. and close at 8 p.m.
Okay. Michelle, anyone else? Go ahead.
So last Sunday, I attended the city of South Lyon put on a creek cleanup, and I just want to give a shout out to them. They did a good job getting a lot of stuff out of our shared watershed. I know they hit some areas in the township, and it's just nice to see a lot of turnout.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? All right, next we have Amy has a presentation for the Downtown Development Authority.
Good evening, everyone. So I wanted to share with you a copy of the DDA annual presentation for 2023. However, the presentation is actually a wrap-up from 2022, just to clarify that. This report is put together to comply with the Michigan Public Act 57 of 2018. It's going to be presented at a special meeting for the DDA next week at 7 p.m. According to the policy, we have to have 2 informational meetings throughout the year, so it'll be presented again in November at a public meeting too. But I wanted to share that information with everybody here. So this slide kind of demonstrates the requirements for those 2 informational meetings. So you can see again that we're presenting the first one on May 9th and the second one will be on November 14th. The DDA does meet monthly, usually on the second Tuesday of the month at 7 p.m. here in this room. So you can see our schedule listed for this year's meetings. The DDA is made up of a board of directors, which are all volunteers outside of myself as the director of that organization and the township supervisor, Mr. John Dolan. You can see on the map here what our DDA boundary is. It is one of the largest DDAs in the state of Michigan. The actual service area for the DDA is just under 4,000 acres, the development area. The capture area is a little bit smaller than that, as you can see on the map highlighted in green. The DDA is funded through tax increment financing. So I just wanted to make a clarification on that. They are not funded through any new taxes. The tax increment financing, how that works is they take the taxable value of a property from when the DDA was created in 1999, and then the DDA is allowed to capture that increased taxable value through the current year. So for an example, if the initial property value was $1 million when the DDA was created and the current value was at 1.25, then the DDA actually only gets to capture the property taxes on the increase of that value, which would be $250,000, and they're just capturing the taxes on that value. It's important to also notice that the DDA does take part in trainings throughout the year throughout various organizations. So both the board and myself took part in many different trainings throughout 2022, including the Main Street USA Now Conference, the Michigan Downtown Association having their spring, summer trainings and their annual conference, the Michigan Economic Developers Association, their Emerging Leaders Training, their Spring Toolbox, and their annual meeting, and then the Oakland County Main Street Program, which we joined last year, their new director orientation that I attended, a summit and leadership training series that were virtual, and then our full board participated in the new board training for that program. The DDA is working on quite a few current projects. Some of them listed here include the parking lot development in our downtown core, design work for the Southeast Ring Road completion, stormwater detention plans for core parcels, and creating a business recruitment program. However, the DDA does maintain a priority list of projects that we would like to be attempting in the next couple of years. A copy of that is on the website available for your viewing, and it is revised and updated 3 times a year so that we ensure that it's current with the needs of the DDA. It has projects such as the New Hudson Drain improvements, our streetscape improvements along Grand River, updating the TIF plan that we're working on, and creating infill development plans for the downtown core, just to name a few. We also wanted to share with you a copy of our audited budget, and you do have a copy of this presentation in your packets, but this just gives you an idea of the capture value that's collected for the DDA, what we bring in other income, grants, sponsorships throughout the year. You can see that total is just over $2.5 million. And then you can see the expenses that are charted for the DDA, including the bond expenses, which are a majority of our budget for the previous completions of the ring road segments. And then you can see there's a significant net revenue throughout the year, but it's very important to be aware that that net revenue is transferred over into our fund balance. And that fund balance, we do have to designate what those funds are looking to be spent on in an average amount of time. So you can see there are quite a few projects that we are looking to spend funds on in the next few years, the priority being the construction of that ring road last leg. The DDA also has numerous contracts that we work with other businesses. So this just gives the listing of all the ones that we currently are maintaining. Anything from Revise for our website hosting to CES, entertainment contracts that we utilize for our special events, Oakland County for our financing agreement, and then rental agreements, which currently the DDA maintains with 2 commercial businesses. We did previously have 1 residential, but that actually just ended this last month. And then to give you a recap of some of the programming that we ran this past year, we had our Billboard Bingo program, which we had quite a few local businesses partake, so they got to display their business advertisement on one of the billboards along 96. We did lots of different events at Inspiration Park, including the scarecrows on the Grand, lighting up the Grand, and our trunk or treating event. We also hosted a History on the Grand walking tour. We did our pancake breakfast with the church and the Giving on the Grand, which is where we invited the entire community out to help set up our Lighting on the Grand festival. We also had our first time event, Music on the Grand Summer Concert Series, that we're getting ready to start again for this summer. We welcomed 13 new businesses to our community, including businesses like Zott Collision, Lavender Dental, The Crossings, and Hey Babe Beauty Bar, just to name a few. One thing that we're really proud of through our outreach to the community is we activated 44 DDA businesses through different events that we ran last year. And what's even more impressive is that we were able to involve 69 total businesses. So we had quite a few out of DDA businesses take part in our events. And with their help, we were able to raise over $18,000 in sponsorships to help us put on all of those promotion events for the year. And it's important to know, too, that the DDA is made up of a volunteer board. We have volunteers that also serve on all of our subcommittees. Last year alone, we had 51 different volunteers participate in our promotional events. 29 volunteers served on the board or a subcommittee for us. Over 947 volunteer hours were logged in total, and 16 other businesses or community groups took part in one of our promotions events at some point during the year. And we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about how the economic impact for the DDA is on our community. In new buildings in the DDA alone, we had an investment of just under $41 million last year. Over $5 million was spent on commercial additions within the DDA. For commercial building alterations, it was just under $4 million. And there was over $200,000 spent on commercial signage within the DDA. One of the things that the DDA board really wanted to focus on too last year was creating a space where we could have these events. Because the township doesn't have a community civic space within the DDA, we were able to work out a user agreement with the biggest property owner in the DDA, who is the New Hudson United Methodist Church, where we created and designated the green space out front as Inspiration Park, where we hosted many events over the year, and over 2,000 people attended all of these different events. We also are active about searching out for additional funding through grants and sponsorships, as I had mentioned earlier. We were awarded through Oakland County Main Street a Flagstar Bank Main Street Placemaking and Facade Improvement Grant, which helped us finance for or pay for the signage for Inspiration Park this year. And we were recognized by eCities again last year, our 7th consecutive year, as being in either 4- or 5-star community in the area. The DDA also is active in creating partnerships, knowing that we have other resources to go out to for assistance with all these other projects. We belong to Michigan Economic Developers Association, the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, Michigan Downtown Association, the Main Street Programs for America and Oakland County, the Lyon Area Chamber of Commerce, and the Michigan Historical Preservation Society. The DDA also wanted to take this time to thank this body, the Lyon Township Board of Trustees, for all the support you have shown through the last year. We truly wouldn't be able to do all the things that we do in the community without our partnership with the township and the support of the local community. So with that, are there any questions about this year's report?
Great job.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, really good job, and I'll tell you, Amy, the downtown has been something to come to nowadays, and it never was in the past. I mean, we've tried to get it here, and with all the new things that you've done, and Music on the Grand, and the church participation and helping us along, it's been a wonderful thing, and I hope everybody comes out to this year.
We've got a lot of great stuff planned, and like I said, it's all volunteer, the community businesses. We've even surpassed our fundraising goal for this year for our sponsorships. Our number of volunteers is on the rise. The number of community businesses that are participating is already at about 80% of what we had for the overall total last year. So people are just continuing to get involved, and it shows what a great township we have.
Such a great thing. We appreciate that.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for filling us in. Okay, we're going to move on to call to the public. Time when anyone can step up to the microphone and talk about things that are non-agenda related. Try to stay in about 3-minute time frame. And give us your name and address for the record. Okay, seeing no one, we're going to move on to reports. First report up, I think you might have already given it.
I think I am done.
Amy of the DDA. All right, we're going to move on to the chief.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
So as we start May, we look at our run volume through the end of this year compared to last year. Last year at this time we were at 521 incidents. Right now we're at 615, so that's up 94 from a year ago. We also have been working on our training a lot as far as with all the new firefighters. It's kind of nice we're not having to swear any new ones in tonight. We're holding on to our staff, but we have to make sure that they're well trained in vehicle extrication. So we have 3 vehicles donated to us by Hadley's Towing that are behind our station, and the firefighters are spending a lot of time tearing those vehicles up and making sure they can get to victims, or just using our latest technology, JAWS, and all the other equipment. Also, our fire marshal has been taking the crews out with him on some of his new inspections, so that they're getting a good idea of the building and doing pre-fire planning, so before the incident, or hopefully no incident, but that they have familiarity with the businesses. And they're also going over the new hydrants and making sure that they identify, mark those, and know where they're at. Last week, we also met with Redstone Architects. We're continuing that process. Last week's meeting focused on station design for if there is a future Station 3, what are the needs of the firefighters, and what is its role. So Redstone will put that together, and we'll have a follow-up meeting, and eventually we'll present something before this board, or we'll just give the findings. And then finally, we probably all of you know about the hazmat incident that we had on the freeway. That was about a 20-hour shutdown. It was about a 9-hour call for us, and our crews did a tremendous job. And we also had the help right from the beginning of Hadley's Towing and also the Oakland County Hazmat team, and they ended up on scene for a much longer period than we did with the state DEQ or the environmental company. So we will be pursuing cost recovery with that, and that can take a while, but we did just get a preliminary report from the hazmat team today that does not include the final expenses, but I'll keep you posted on that as it goes on. And that concludes my report.
I heard that was a real sticky situation.
It was, yeah, I haven't heard that.
All right, move on to LT. Oh, look at this.
This is our baby boy. I can't keep him too long. It's his day off. I don't want any problems with his union.
Georgie.
What do we have here?
As many of you know, we had another school threat this past Thursday at Southline High School. This threat was written on the girls' bathroom wall, stating that they will blow the building up on 4/27. They gave us a date. We brought in several resources, K9 dogs from all over the state. We searched the building with negative results. But I'm happy to report we've identified a strong suspect, right? We went through the same procedure that we went through previously at that school on November 3rd with the handwriting. So we were able to just visually secure the information, but we still have to conduct the investigation and bring in the resources from the state police. So I'm expecting about 4 or 5 months, we should have some sort of definitive answer for you. The family's being cooperative at this time, so that may make it go quicker. But in any event, I will keep you posted. My next issue is I want to notify the public there's a popular scam going around. This one is the jury duty scam. This is where people are calling residents. They're stating that they're deputies from the Oakland County Sheriff's Office, and they have a warrant for their arrest for failing to go to jury duty at a federal court. This is a scam. No one, please. The IRS will never call and demand money to be paid immediately over the phone. They'll send you a demand letter for money. That's how it works. So please be aware. Don't give anybody any money for any reason whatsoever. Are there any questions on anything that I've covered? All right, and lastly, I'd like to formally introduce the 25th and a half deputy assigned to the Lyon Township substation, our baby boy, Georgie.
Oh, so happy to have him. Such a cutie.
Yeah. Did you run him around? Did you get to?
He comes to visit me all the time.
All right, folks. Have a good evening.
Thank you for that.
The money for him. All by myself.
All right, we're going to move on. Planning Commission.
Oh, sorry. I'm still in love with that little doggy. I can't help myself. Okay, we did have 2 meetings in April. The meeting on April 10th, I was not in attendance. I was on vacation. But I was in attendance for the Monday, April 24th. We only had one agenda item under old business, and it was the Zeal Credit Union site plan. We had tabled it from the month before due to a couple things that they were short, and
the entrance into the actual Zeal Credit Union. We did approve it, but I just have to tell you, I'm still not happy about it, only because we were promised restaurants, and I don't see the need for a credit union, but it's allowed in the plan development, so it was approved. We had one naysayer at the board meeting for the Planning Commission. And that was it. That was our only agenda item, so.
Okay, Brian,
Pretty
anything on the
simple.
10th that you want to add?
Sure. The 10th, we talked a bit about street parking in neighborhoods and the fire department's request for us to look at ways to ensure that that roads within subdivisions are wide enough for them to access any homes that they need to service, as well as keeping hydrants free and clear. So I'll take this opportunity to encourage the public to park away from hydrants, first and foremost, but we may be presenting some further amendment proposals to the Planning Commission regarding that. And then the Planning Commission also determined an extension of a site plan was not appropriate. This is for New Hudson Medical. This was the site as part of Orchards of Lyon that used to be referred to as the daycare parcel, but a few years ago the board allowed them to pursue a medical office. This would have been their third extension, and the Planning Commission didn't feel that there was adequate reason to extend that site plan, so it was denied. So if something new is to go there, it will go through the formal site plan process with the Planning Commission again. I think that concludes that meeting.
Okay, thank you for that. Any questions? Planning Commission? All right, Lise.
We had a meeting on,
We did.
on Monday, April 17th, and the item was a request for a variance from section 18.03A3, which would require a setback of 10 feet from the rear lot line, and this applicant was requesting this variance of 10 feet, which would have brought in the pool that he wanted to construct to a rear yard setback of 0 feet. And as nobody on the ZBA could recall having any 0-foot setback for anything, that was in fact denied for that request. And that concludes my elaborate report.
Thanks.
There will not be a meeting in May.
All right, moving on to building. Dave, anything from building?
Good evening, everybody. Yeah, just a few boring numbers. We had a total permits of 251 permits, and new residential permits of 17. This is for the month of March. We had 21 C of Os, temporary C of Os, because of grading issues can't be done yet. They're starting to work between the raindrops on that stuff. And then we had 4 full C of Os. We had a total of 835 inspections, with the building inspectors had 352. And then this, a couple weeks ago, we went into, this was in April, this happened a couple weeks ago, was we were over at the Lockwood of Lyon at the Senior Living Center, and they are getting ready to move some people. They got a full C of O now. They've got it where they're temporary, and there's only a couple of little things that have to be done over there. Was some handicap spots as soon as the asphalt can start going. So they are, which I wasn't really aware of this, but they have some of their percentage of their rooms are affordable housing, and those people are going to move in probably by the middle of the month, because they don't, they're not required to have the meal package part of their rent. So they can move them in before the kitchen's ready, because it takes them a while to get the kitchen going. They got to get in there, get the people familiar and set up and everything like that. And they should open up full by the end of the month. They should be open up for everybody coming in. And I know there's I think they're about 65-70% already rented out. So it's a pretty good deal over there. So So, and then we finished out another building, LBC 2, which was down on Grand River, which is a wall bridge project, which is a shell building. There's about 111 square feet, something like that. So 111,000 square feet. And they were close to having somebody moving in there, but it's not signed up yet. And then lastly, over here at the big development there in Milford, which we are supplying the water to, we're going to have our first final inspection over there on May 4th this week. Will be our first time that the inspectors get in there. So what we do over there, in case you don't know, is we go in there and do the connection, and that is the same. That's Vince D'Angelo. Their crew is still, they're over there. They hook up the water and they go to the curb stop, and then in the end, we do the final inspection is to look at the R900 and the water meter, and our plumbing inspector goes over there 3 times, 3 inspections. So that's all a pass through from them to us, and we do all the billing in that. And Melanie is keeping a close eye on the water meters and stuff, so they get, they're in the right spot. If they get them in the wrong spot, then somebody's paying for somebody else's water. So that's kind of exciting, I guess, going over there, and 2 communities working together like that. It's a real good thing. So
It is a good thing.
That pretty much. Thank you.
Okay, any questions for Dave?
Thanks, Dave.
I have a question for you. What's the status of the water tower that will be required for the project?
Okay, so on the
Because I know
water
we're kind of
tower,
going into water, but dovetailing.
Yeah. we just put out the RFPs this week. So once we get them back, we'll pick probably bring it here. We'll talk about it, and we'll pick somebody to build the tower. It might be Artesian, if he can stay in the ball. We'd like to have him do it because he's,
Right. And that is being paid for by the developer.
It is.
And have they already deposited those funds?
We have a letter of credit.
Yeah, we have a letter of credit.
Okay,
Yep, for the
Excellent.
entire amount.
okay. Because obviously we haven't started yet, but that
Yep.
would need to be in place pretty soon. so-
But we have the money. Whenever we're ready, we go.
Thanks.
Okay? And then speaking of the water, so as you know, the softening plant has been turned on. We've been softening water since about the 19th. We had a couple glitches in startup like we normally would. We had a couple days where we had to readjust a few things. We ended up with about 8 grains of water hardness we're putting into the system, between 8 and 10. Now it's taken a while. It's going to take a while to get through the system. We're figuring about, the end of this month, which is, the end of last month, we figure most people could probably bypass their softener and try it. Or if they have a way to check their hardness in their water, they could use a kit to check it. But it is blended right now, and we have a lot of water to replace in the system. So I'm thinking it's probably going to take a month, realistically, putting this grain water in. But I do know that the Woodwind sub and the 10-mile corridors started to get 14 grain, which is down from 24. So they're doing pretty well, and I think we'll get it down to about 8 to 10. And I do think it's going to take a little longer. It's probably going to be a while. We got to replace 5 million gallons and do that. It's going to blend its way through. Eventually it'll all come through. I don't know how yours is. Have you checked
well,
it?
let me tell you, my hair has never been more magnificent. I barely have to use any shampoo. And it's not because I don't have hair. Everybody can see I have a ton of hair. No, actually, I can tell, John. I know I'm at the end of the run, sort of, but I can already tell.
Can you tell? Have you bypassed?
I think I can. Maybe I'm just
Have you bypassed?
psychological. I have not bypassed.
Oh, well.
I'm waiting for you
You're
to
still
tell me
getting
when.
soft water if you didn't bypass.
I need to, no, I can definitely tell it's been better. So
Yeah, it is getting better, and we're noticing it. It's coming through, but it is going to take a while. The plans for the second plant will be put in probably about the 10th of this month, and we think that's going to go through pretty quick. So we'll probably be under construction soon on that. So things are going. They're moving along. Our plants are doing well. Water's keeping up perfect. We're going to have great water here. Give it about another 2 weeks, maybe a month, and I think it's going to be about 8 to 10 everywhere.
How, I know this will be like the first year of probably, to where we can really gauge the bulk water sales at 9 and Griswold.
Oh,
What-
gosh,
what do
yeah.
we
We've had
anticipate?
some problems there. That's been a...
And I don't want to open up a can of worms
No.
necessarily if you're not prepared.
We've
for
just
it.
had some, it's very close to our 9-mile tower, and we've had some pressure hammers that has blown our backflow protectors off and soaked the inside of that. And believe me, it was doing very well, and they're just dying. We've got it back on again, but it's on and off. I think we've got it fixed now, but it was a problem. We've been working on it. That's another thing. But it's great. Everybody's using it.
Have we put out, where have we,
I
I don't
can
want to
get
say
that.
advertise, because that's
No,
not
I can get
necessary,
that, though.
but I didn't know if there was a way for us to kind of get the word out so that people...
Yeah.
Because, I mean, it's not just selling bulk water that helps us to kind of keep the rates low for all the residents, because we're selling it for people to use in their pools and for construction, things like that, but it also gives people an option to go and get it somewhere.
Yeah.
Because it does happen all over the county, or everywhere, where people come and they hook onto a hydrant and they fill their trucks, or they fill their tankers with water, not most people, but some, and maybe some of those folks would think twice and go if they had a good option and maybe buy water. It's still pretty cheap.
We've actually sold a lot of water, and I can get a report on that. It is up and running again. It just went down a couple times on us, but it's running good now, and I think it'll stay. We've had to do some waterproofing inside the shed, and we've done some different things, but it's good now. But other than that, the water rate study, I know that we've been talking about that. That's been ongoing. Our Vic, our guy, was out of town. He was gone for 6 months. He come back. We've had a nice long chat with him, and we're almost there. In order to bring back.
Yeah, you did a good job.
He is really a good guy. I'll tell you, he's very smart. But I think we might have some surprises on that whole thing, which is good surprises, I think. I think good ones. So we had our last meeting with him just this week, so I think maybe June, I'm thinking more, maybe July, we'll have everything put together and bring it to you, okay? Other than that, everything's good. I mean, I'd still wait a couple weeks. I say bypass the water systems if you're on 10 Mile. Try it. If you don't like the water yet, turn the softener back on for another couple weeks. But it's getting there. Okay? And the other thing is, we didn't blast it out yet because the water's not quite there yet. As soon as we get soft water where we can say, hey, it's everywhere in the township, we'll blast it out everywhere, and everybody can just eliminate their softeners. It'll be gone. Okay? All right, any questions? Okay. We're going to move on to unfinished business. Oh, there's none. We'll move on to new business. First is consideration of the nonprofit recognition of a local organization for Ann Dolson Elementary School PTO. This is an easy one. They're looking to do a raffle.
Yeah.
Oh, come on up.
Hi,
How you doing?
good evening. Thanks for hearing our request.
Sure.
My name is Tiffany Nishaw. I am the president of the PTO at Anna Dolson Elementary on Rice Street. I'm not exactly sure what I need to do here this evening, but it's lovely to be with you all. Last year, we decided to do something different, and we had just a raffle basket where each classroom had a parent sort of lead a group and put together a basket, and then did a raffle at our end of the year party on the playground. I was not the president last year, so I'm not sure how they did things, but I was handed an envelope with paper and said, make sure you get this okayed. So April back there has helped me along the way thus far, but I'm not quite sure what we need to do from here.
Well, I think you're going to be just fine. So, somebody want to make a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we approve the request for nonprofit recognition of local organizations for Ann Dolson Elementary.
I'll support.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? There you go.
Thank
Great
you,
job.
I appreciate it.
Great job.
It's fast.
All right, we're going to move on to B, the Chickerell Lion Plan Development AP 2230 Conceptual Review. Brian, go ahead, and you want to open that up, please?
I will. In December, the Township Board reviewed a proposal at the conceptual review phase of a plan development for the Chickerell parcel. This is on the southern end of, well, I guess it's in the central portion of the Pontiac Trail corridor across from Saddle Creek. The The proposal has subsequently been amended and brought back to you. We're still technically at the conceptual review phase, but in the discussions in December, the Township Board agreed to hear some modifications at this phase before going to preliminary. So the plans have been updated since you last saw them. The proposed number of housing units here is 54 homes. That's based on a revised parallel plan of 34 lots, which based on our future land use plan would equate to 43 lots. In addition to the modification in number of units that are proposed, there is a larger setback of 100 feet along Pontiac Trail, which was one of the items that the Township Board requested. The homes have been moved away from the gas well that's in the middle of the site, which is one of the discussions that we had about the cul-de-sac at that location. So that cul-de-sac has been revised and all of the units appear to make sense in terms of their placement on that proposed road. There has been a rural view shed added along the Pontiac Trail corridor with fencing, landscaping, and amenities, including a gathering area with canopy trees along that frontage. There's also a public sidewalk along that frontage and a proposed contribution for approximately 1,200 lineal feet of walkway, and that's based on the distance between the Chickerell property and the closest subdivision, which is to the south. It's Carriage Trace. That's to the south. So. But rather than install that 1,200 lineal feet of pathway, it would be coming to the township in the form of a contribution to meet that ordinance obligation. Finally, there is also a proposed trailhead to the pathway that is proposed internally to the site. So that's the brief summary from the planning perspective. We always talk about the proposed density on the property, and your important numbers there are 43 lots from the future land use plan and 54 are proposed. I also want to address the letter that I sent late Friday afternoon regarding a question or a clarification about the way that our ordinances deal with regulated wetlands and the density of a project. So the way that our subdivision ordinance is written, anything within a regulated wetland that Eagle does not allow to be filled would be required to be removed from both the parallel plan and the final development plan. So as the project moves forward, we'll request a formal determination by Eagle as to whether or not the wetlands on this property are regulated or not. Ultimately, that's an Eagle call. There is a lot of wet area on this property, and the Robertson brothers have presented earlier in the process a wetland report, and in that report there are wetlands that are defined, but that also defers to Eagle for the final determination for those wetland areas. So you can talk about that further if you'd like, but
Okay.
But that's where we're at from planning.
Okay, does anybody have any questions for Brian at this time?
Is the thought, Brian, that these will be regulated wetlands due to the stream and the proximity, all the connections? I mean, I would be surprised if this wouldn't be regulated.
Well, the wetland report assumes that they are, based on that proximity to the, I believe it's an unnamed water course that runs through there. An unnamed drain, but you know, there are, who knows, Eagle may allow remediation elsewhere, or they may have a bit different interpretation. I just don't know at this point.
Okay. Anything else this time? Okay. Well, I know the applicants are here. Do you want to come on up and come on up?
Yeah, one of the homeowners we're buying the property from would like to speak, if that's okay.
Well, I was figuring we'll give comments.
Okay.
I will give comments, but I'd like to get past the first of the applicant.
Okay. Jim Clark, Robertson Homes, 6905 Telegraph Road, Bloomfield Hills, Michigan. Good. You're going to bring that up. Thank you. Now just paging up. So just want to page up and down, right? So once again, Brian's done a wonderful job describing the project, summarizing the changes from our last meeting, and detailing, I think, in this report, the eligibility criteria for a planned development. As Brian had mentioned, we initially came in front of you, not that this is relevant, but we continue trying to be most improved. We came to you in front of you with a concept for 81 units. When we last met, it was 60 units, and I think there was some resounding response that we should look at reducing the density again and increasing the amenities in an effort to provide for what is provided for in your ordinances, which is your ability to increase density or reduce density based upon the value of the project you see and the uniqueness of the project. So we are coming back to you with a 54-unit project, 10% reduction again in density, and we achieved that by eliminating one of the cul-de-sacs that you will see in this 60-unit plan, which I think was called awkward at the Planning Commission and maybe not liked by this board also. So we now have a proposal for 54 units. So this is the existing site plan. As Brian mentioned, we moved the closest unit to the right-of-way was 80 feet. That unit sided to the right-of-way. Those 4 units sided to the right-of-way. Those have now, with the reduction in units, been moved to 100 feet from the right-of-way and 140 or 50 feet from the actual road pavement at this time. So that allowed us to continue to increase that rural viewscape that's mentioned in your ordinance and trying to preserve that area. So this would obviously be preserved in perpetuity, maintained and taken care of by the association, which we would put together for the condominium development. So what you see in the pictures is what you would get, and its continued preservation would be a matter of ordinance and condominium law written into the condo docs. Brian spoke about the parallel plan. Yes, there are regulated wetlands, but we have spoken to our wetland consultant, and every one of these lots is a buildable lot under Eagle's criteria in accordance with what she has told us. Now, I'm not Eagle and I'm not the consultant, but the consultant says these are buildable lots. Your ordinance may say you can't build a house on a property with a wetland, but she's unaware of that being an Eagle requirement. So there are wetlands within those property boundaries, but we are allowed to build on a lot that has wetlands on it. I mean, that just makes sense. If you had 100 acres and 10 of them were wet, you could build on it. You just can't build on the 10 acres that are wet. So I don't know whether it's a little back and forth with semantics, but those are all buildable lots. We're still not at that density, and we're hoping that the uniqueness of this site, which is in the Davis Creek, and it is identified in your master plan, is I think a number 2 area or number 2 priority area for preservation. Our plan preserves 90 or 79% of the site in open space. So we think the use of a PUD to preserve that much open space and cluster these houses, 100 feet from the right of way, but still cluster them in closer to, and then provide the open space and the paths in the balance of the project, which we have, once again, in accordance with your criteria for granting additional density, we have offered to dedicate that open space. I understand the requirements or the complexities of a dedication, but we would certainly deed restrict it, conservation easement, or whatever was the appropriate way to make sure that our open space, as you see it here, is once again in perpetuity and wouldn't change, and would be part of any future purchaser buying in that it's not subdivision, in that enclave development. They would know that is such as I don't know what you do to maintain a wild nature area, but maintain the paths would basically be what I think the commitment would be. So I just referenced the 79% open space. Now that does not exclude wetlands. If we exclude the wetlands, I think we're more like 50 or 60% open space. but the wetlands will function as, we're going to have a scenic overlook out on the wetlands. So I think it's a very nice amenity. The design elements in this is inaccurate. It shows an 80-foot setback from the right-of-way. It is a 100-foot setback. We didn't change the cartoon, so my apologies for that. I'll talk to Tim afterwards. Just kidding. What you're seeing here is what we're proposing. We're proposing stone walls and fences. We're proposing an open space area for passersby or people who are walking along this trail. I don't know if it's a gatehouse, but an entrance structure at the entrance to the property. The pathway going right up to the stream and then crossing over as part of the right-of-way. A lot of increased landscaping. As you can see, there's a preponderance of new landscape material. So the 4 houses that side to it or closest to the Pontiac Trail right-of-way will actually be very heavily screened from the right-of-way, and everything else is, I don't want to say an infinite viewscape, but it's 200 or 300 feet, which is in your ordinance to have that rural viewscape. So we did the best we could by positioning the homes. This is the just under 1 mile path. I think it's 0.69 or 0.79 feet in, or not feet, but 0.7 of a mile in length. It would be an out and back path with a scenic overlook looking over the wetlands. Then your design excellence standards, which Brian also touched on in his report and Tim had touched on in his narrative. A provision of usable and contiguous open space, which we think we accomplish by dedicating and or deed restricting that area. Provision for multiple use trails. We believe we've handled that with the almost a mile of trails. Donation of land for parks or open space. If we put a conservation easement, I think that would be probably the most appropriate way to handle it. I'm not sure you want this as a township park, although we can do that. Reclamation and reuse of land where previous uses have caused severe development difficulties. I don't know if it's severe, but it is. There is an active well site on it. I feel we've done an adequate job screening ourselves from it. The state of Michigan has very stringent requirements for how that would be decommissioned when and if it does get decommissioned. It will ultimately be decommissioned. All their cleanup standards would come into play, and then that would fold back into the open space on the development. Preservation of the rural view shed. I think I've talked a lot about that. An installation of a streetscape on an interior road beyond what is required. Hopefully we've done that. There was I don't want to call it a little back and forth, but our traffic engineer viewed this as if it was a single-family home community. It is not a single-family home community. We know from 70 years of doing this that when you build ranch homes and don't let people use their backyards and you restrict that, no playscapes, no swimming pools, none of that, you get an age-targeted buyer. We do not restrict the age-targeted buyer, but the traffic between a single-family home and an age-targeted product is 40 to 50% less traffic and utilization of services. So we did not use those in determining what was necessary for the traffic improvements, but this is a discussion that Brian and your traffic engineer will have. I want you to know we use the more stringent standard, which is what we're building, which is single-family homes. I think the last time we met, there was hopefully some support for the concept. I'm here tonight because we believe that this is a product type that's important for a lot of communities in the age and stage of development is Lyon Township. This is an observation from just a developer's standpoint. We know there's a market need for it. Doesn't mean you want it, but it does provide long-term residents a way to stay in their community, sell their 4-bedroom, 2.5-bath colonial, and have a lock, load, and leave housing type. So we know, because we're doing this in other communities like Northville and Rochester, that everybody who comes in is that buyer profile. It isn't kids. Now we do allow a story and a half, so you can put one. If your college kid comes home, they can go upstairs. You don't have to have them in your den sleeping every night, which doesn't work, I can tell you that. So basically, what we are here doing is asking this board for some concurrence or circling around of a .16 unit increase in density per acre on an almost 70-acre site. The density will be undiscernible of .16 more units per acre. We have put our best foot forward in terms of offering to pay for off-site sidewalks and increasing what we hope is the visual elements for the community with the viewscape and the trail system and everything else. But we are at a point where it doesn't make sense to reduce the density further and also provide all the things we want to provide to make this truly a unique community. So I know we've gone at this 3 or 4 times. This is our best foot forward. So I'm here, I don't want to say hat in hand. I think we have, I'd say hat in hand if I thought it was a bad proposal, but we were very excited about this project in this location in your township. So Tim or Darian, did I miss anything I should have spoken about? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Jim. You want to come on up and go ahead and just give your name and address for the record, please?
Good evening, everybody. My name is Tom Poole. I live at 27500 Pontiac Trail with my wife, Suzanne. We moved there back in 1996 from Novi, which was about 27 years ago. We thought this house was going to be our forever house. And I understand Mr. Chickerell wanted to sell the property. I have no qualms about that, but my first choice, of course, would be don't build. I want to stay and live there. And my wife is kind of feeling like, well, a new house, instead of a 1913 house, because that's when my house was built. An updated house would be better, and I'm happy. I just want woods and pole barns if I do move. But anyway, you got to bear with me here, because I am a little bit nervous. We moved in there with our 2 girls. We raised them. One moved off, got married. The other one had 2 kids. We raised the grandkids for the first 7 years of their lives. And what's interesting is about 25 years ago, a couple years after I've lived there, I got a knock on the door, and it was a developer. And he gave me some paperwork, says, we want to offer you this amount of money to develop the property around you. And after about going back 6 months or so, he gave me another bid, and he goes, he wants to take a look at the property a little bit deeper. And that was the last I heard of him. He didn't come back, didn't call back. I don't know what that was all about, but I've got an assumption that I can talk about here in a minute. And then some 20 years later, I get a letter in the mail, and it was from R.B. Robertson, saying they want to develop and they're interested in purchasing my home. So after, I guess it was about a year or so, we agreed on a purchase amount. It was offered, it was signed, it was accepted. And now we've been coming to you guys 4 or 5 times now, and they've been presenting stuff to you, and it keeps on getting rejected. And I don't know much about development, but I'm giving you what I see. And I see a piece of property that I don't think anybody else would tackle. But R.B. Robertson is putting a lot of effort and time into this. And they're not just doing this for a profit. They're concerned about the community. They realize the land needs to be taken care of, and they're building walks and places where you can view the wildlife. They're just putting their all into it. And they haven't told me this, but I'm picking up that they're coming to their wits' end. And if they don't develop, I don't think anybody else is going to develop. And I'm here I wish I could make a motion to accept what they're doing, because I would do that. And, they're building a place where the people that are getting older, like me, I'm 65, we're empty nesters now. And this is a place for them empty nesters to go, even though one empty nester would have to leave, probably. But getting to that is, I asked my wife, well, how do you feel about this? And her first thing was, well, she doesn't want to move. She doesn't want anybody built around us. But she's feeling like she wants that newer home instead of a 1913 house. And so I'm for the sale of my house and moving. But I'm also okay with staying there, and I need to explain why. And, you know, while it's going to be tough, a while ago I was diagnosed with cancer. And they told me the operation that you need to have, you know, is you could die. All right? But I'm a Christian. I know where I'm going if I die. So I looked at that as a win-win situation. If I die, I go to Jesus. If I live, I go back to my wife. It's a win-win situation. And I look at this sale of my house, and I need to tell you how I got this house, because that'll explain everything to you. Like I said, we used to live in Novi in a trailer park off of Napier Road. The girls were 15, 16. We decided, you know, we just run out of room. We need to find a place. We drove by this house many times, and I'd say 75% of the time it was up for sale. The other 25%, I don't know, this for sale sign was down. I don't know why. And we had a pre-approved limit from the bank. We could spend this much on a new house. Sue sees the house and he goes, well, I'm going to make an appointment with a realtor. And I said, don't do that. It's just setting up a disappointment. You know, we're not going to be able to afford that big 2,000 square foot house and a couple acres. We're just not going to be able to afford it. Well, she didn't listen to me, which happens a lot. And we went through there, and she fell in love with the house, and I fell in love with the property. And like I said, they were asking this much, we're approved for this much, and we settled in the middle, purchase agreement signed, but there was a contingency. And that contingency was, because we didn't have the down payment, we'd have to sell the mobile home, the trailer, as a down payment. So they gave me a 72-hour contingency on this house, that they could still sell the house to somebody else if they had the down payment. They'd have to call me, give me 72 hours to come up with the down payment. Everybody follow that? Mm-hmm. And that was pretty tough. So they called me on a Thursday, told me they have somebody that wants to buy the property, has a down payment. You've now got 72 hours to come up with the money. So Thursday goes by, and I had a list of all the people that stopped. Like I said, this was a nice trailer. It was double wide carpet fireplace. We took care of it, really good condition. And just nobody was biting, and I had all the names of everything. Now I'm on the third day of this 72-hour contingency. And I got like 2 hours left to sell the house. And I had nothing, you know. So I decided to go back to the bedroom and pray. I didn't make it to the bedroom. Knelt down in the hallway and I prayed. And I was just talking to God, explaining my situation. I wasn't asking to win the lottery or money in the mailbox or any of that kind of stuff. I was just explaining my situation. And while I stood up from that prayer in that hallway, the phone rang, and it was this grandfather who wanted to buy it for his grandkid. Now, people can look at that as just a chance thing, but to me, that was a direct answer to prayer, and it was a gift from God having this house. And now that's been in my head fighting the last 3 years, because that's how long this thing's been going on, is how do you give away or sell or get rid of a gift from God? You just don't do that. So I went to talk to my pastor. I'm the chair of the elders at my church in Northville. And I don't like going to pastor with my problems because I just handle them myself, you know. But I needed to go to him, and he told me that, well, sometimes gifts from God's are given to you so you can pass it along to somebody else. And that's how I feel right now, that it's like that operation was a win-win situation. So I can stay in that house, or I can sell the house and move on and let that be the empty nesters.
Tom, let me let you know, there's a process, okay, that the township, we have to be every development that comes into the building has to go through a process, and part of the process is, does it work, doesn't it work? And it's not one resident that we have to make sure we please, but it's the entire township. So it has to work through the entire township. And believe me, the reason it takes 5 meetings is because this board does its job. We make sure that we get the product that we believe is good for the township. And believe me, we just do this because it's our job. I mean, we're not, if this project works, this board will stand behind it. And if it doesn't work, it may not work, but we're going to hash through that, and we're going to figure that out.
I understand that, but there's times when I'm riding around doing whatever I do. I'm retired right now, and I see houses that are only 15 feet apart, and I'm going, well, why is this site plan being rejected because of density? And it just doesn't seem to me. And like, again, I don't know, your guys' jobs.
It's a process, and different projects are different things, and I'm sure that they've gotten density in other places. We're going to work through that. And we do appreciate you standing up and commenting, but we do have to move on, and we do appreciate you coming up. Pardon me?
Just one last thing. Like I said, I chair the Board of Elders. One of my guys on the Elders has lived in 2 homes built by R.B. Robertson, and he hasn't had a single problem with them.
We know that.
I've talked to people, they're reputable,
We all know that. We do know that here. I mean, they've done projects in our township. We're very pleased with them. It has nothing to do with their quality. It's just a process we have to go through. But please sit down and listen to it, and we'll see where it ends up. You never know. And so sorry to hear about your situation. I hope the best for you.
I'm back to 95%.
That's awesome. That's great. Well, thank you. Thank you, Tom. Okay. So we're going to move on, and we're going to talk about the conceptual drawing, and I'd like to open it up for comments. Oh, come on up. Sure, come on up. Come on up. Absolutely.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm, excuse me, Steve Kuntz, 27312 Pontiac Trail. I am probably the only specific person that this affects. We share that southern, well, I guess on the conceptual drawing, that's the north end of my property. That's my garage that you see there. I'm kind of conflicted because I'm in the business. I rent equipment for home builders, and I like to see them work, but not in my backyard. We do a lot of work with Robertson Brothers and all the other developers, but I have a couple of concerns or things I'd like to talk about. We're zoned R1 here, and I know that this is a 67-acre property. And they're talking about putting in 54 units, but how many units are going in, or how many acres are being used for these 54 units? It doesn't really seem like 1 unit per acre. It seems like 54 in a very condensed spot. There is that open drain that goes through the back of my site, and I think right through the Chickerell property, and it's an Oakland County drain line, I believe. And when we start developing all of that, what happens to the water that would have gotten into the ground? Does that now go into that drain and overflow it and subsequently my backyard? I'd like to be aware of that. That's a concern for me, Tom says that he's an empty nester and this is a community for empty nesters, but I'm on the other side of that. I've got 2 young kids and we want to enjoy this property for a long time. And I don't really want everybody button up against me. I understand if you're in a subdivision, that's one thing, but we had a parcel of land and we thought that we had a nice wide open spaces, and I don't know if that's something that we can consider. I know you said that it's up to the board to do what's best for the township or a lot of people, not just one specific. But as being the one specific right here, I'd ask that there be as much buffer between their border, well, I guess the border, between their property and my side yard there. I just kind of wanted to say those things, and
I appreciate that.
I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you. Okay. Anyone else want to come on up? We all good? Okay, then I'm going to open this up for conversation here on the board. Anyone like to start? Chris, you want to start?
Sure. Yeah, I have a couple items, but I guess my main item, as I kind of mentioned at the last conceptual meeting, was the density, the number of total units. It was mentioned, I think I said 35 at the last meeting, and that was based on the parallel plan, and that's under the assumption that it is valid with the regulated wetlands. So density is still probably the number one issue in my mind, and was hoping we would get it closer to that 35 number. A couple of things I will say that I did like between the iterations, the distance from the pavement for the first homes, you're now at 100 feet, which is good. I was just measuring Saddle Creek just on Google Maps, which isn't totally accurate, but they're about 140, 150 feet. So you're getting closer to that rural shed, and I think what you've presented along Pontiac Trail, landscaping-wise, is probably better for screening as well. You mentioned possibly a conservation easement for the rear part of the property. I like that. I think that's a good thing. There's a question on maintenance of the path and overlooks and stuff, if that falls within the township or that individual neighborhood as well, and how that relates to the oil well that's back there. The traffic report, I did read through that, and I did appreciate that they did the more conservative assumptions for single-family homes. I think that helps, and they actually put in a decent growth rate within the township of 2.5%, which is higher than most do, especially given that we've pretty much doubled in population over the last decade. I know it hasn't been reviewed yet, but with the road commission, but there may be a left turn lane extension coming up that you may want to be aware of. And I guess I'm also curious too, you mentioned the units per acre and what that actually is when you take out the amount of wetlands there, and what is that open space truly, and maybe as this comes back for preliminary review, if that can be more clearly defined, because it is a bit deceiving when you're saying 54 units on a 80-acre parcel when most of it's wetlands. So I guess I want that clarified as well. But really, just it's the overall density that I'm having a real hard time with the parallel plan being 35 and you're up at 54. That's quite a lot.
Okay. Lise, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I would agree with Chris regarding the density, that being a concern of mine. And in looking at the plan, I'd like to know what the developer would have in mind for screening. We've had developers in the past who really take a lot of time in making sure that they've communicated with their neighbors, their existing neighbors, and really increasing the screening. Some developers are really, really good about it. Some developers are adequate. Some developers are less than adequate. And I would say that looking at the plan here, just in screening, I forgot your name, sir, but the second, Steve. Thank you, Steve. If I'm looking at the map here, the screening that he would have is, I would put at adequate, 36, units 36 and 37. So I would like you to address that. Sure.
Sure.
Come on. Whatever works.
What's a back and forth? I'd like to.
Okay, so can I go to the other question, then come right back?
Absolutely not.
So it's
Yes.
38.88 acres without the wetlands based on our wetlands consultant, which is not an Eagle-reviewed document, so it would be over 57% open space, removing the wetlands, which we're not going to remove. They're going to be part of an open space, but mechanically it's 57%, not 79%. That's the math. Without acting prickly, I've met Chris's wife at the last 2 or 3 meetings. I've exchanged my card with her at least once, maybe twice, and said, please call if there are issues of screening. We always take care of those. We are double the setback from the side property line is their home, and we will absolutely address screening that and looking at adjusting units. So we always do that, and I've offered that, and I have not been called yet, and I'm not. So he's here, and we're at another meeting, and I will offer it in public to make sure that it's on the record that we would, of course, work with a neighboring homeowner with screening and/or adjustments so that we are not adversely impacting him. So I know we have clustered the density at the front of the property, but that is because of the particular nature of the site. So,
Jim, you said Chris, but did you mean Steve?
I meant Steve. I'm sorry, Steve. Excuse me.
I just wanted to.
Sorry, I wrote your name down, Chris, with a comment, and I glanced down and read Steve's name wrong.
So, to continue then, I guess trying to talk to Ryan a little bit and hearing what you have to say, I can't really tell based on this rendering what your screening solution would be. If this is what I see on this plan, the existing trees that are there, I don't need a definitive, like, here's a stake in the ground that tells me exactly where the tree is going to be. It just looks rather sparse from what you've presented to us.
So we, behind units 20, 39, 38, and 37, we have existing trees, and we will put in a pine screen. I think that's something just we need to, it's not an ordinance requirement, it's something that we will commit to working out with the homeowner.
Right.
And this is, since we're just at preliminary concept, we haven't done a detailed landscape plan to answer your question.
Right. And so, like I said, I based on what I have before me, it did not look outstanding, but it is still at the conceptual level. So I would just ask if you would, whether a resident's wife returns your phone call or not.
Well, and I don't, like I said, we haven't dialogued, but we have spoken after every meeting. So
but you know his house is there. You don't need his wife to tell you that.
Yes.
So the next comment, I see, talks about recognizable benefits, so I'm looking at the review letter and item number 1 with eligibility criteria. And in our section 7.02, I'm a word person, so I see that it shall result in a recognizable and substantial benefit, not only to the ultimate users, but also to the community. So I was wondering if you could share with me what you think out of your 7 bulleted items on number 1 of the review. What do you think, what would you consider is your substantial contribution to the overall community? So if you would just pick 1 or 2.
Okay. The offer to put a conservation easement and a just under a mild pathway system for the public's benefit on a private property, maintained by an association, not by the township, would be one benefit that I don't think is required on it's above and beyond a single-family home zoning criteria. So the improvements, which will total it, will be very expensive along Pontiac Trail, would be another recognizable benefit that would not be present in a straight single-family subdivision you just put in houses. So the meandering path, the benches, the gathering areas, the dry stack stone walls and the fence details, the trailhead to enter into that pathway would be another benefit, and the offer to take 1,200 lineal feet of sidewalk and pay for that into a sidewalk fund would be another benefit. What other benefits do we have? It's a benefit that's inherent of the product type, which is the reduction in traffic, the reduction in the height of the homes, the less massing on the street, the offer to move them 100 feet off, and that's the minimum, because everywhere but in the siding of 4 homes on it, the viewscape is substantially larger than 100 feet from the right-of-way.
So, okay. I mean, I feel like most of those that you did list tend to be more focused on the end user as opposed to the general community at large, but I'm willing to hear more at a future meeting.
We're trying to give what the people going by it would see, which would be the Pontiac Trail, the trail system,
Right.
and new sidewalks, which are all outside of what we would do.
Right. Now, my other question, too, is regarding the sidewalk, the 1,200 lineal feet of sidewalk. So when you have that fund, how is that estimate being made? Is that including, like, what would the actual cost be if the sidewalk were to be put in there? Like, this is, if there were a boardwalk necessary, that's what the actual cost would reflect. If there needs to be any kind of land balancing, you know, that's going to be the real cost, not just 1,200 feet of what a flat surface would be with.
So what,
getting a nod, right?
what we had offered,
Okay.
I can just speak to what we are offering, would be 1,200 lineal feet at whatever width your pathway system is, not at the minimum cost to put it in, which is somewhere around $4 a foot, but at somewhere like $10 a foot, which would provide for some of the things. The discussion we had is we don't have the right of way to put it in down to the subdivision to the south. That may not be where the township wants the sidewalk to be put in. So I'd like to define an amount cooperatively with the township to say what is the right amount, so it isn't just a already sanded, crashed area with side rails and I just got to come in and pour concrete. But I also am not looking to do the raised rail like they have in Chicago and New York. So somewhere between the two.
I would like for the engineer to really put together the actual number, not just an estimate or, you know, a kind of a guesstimate. I would like to know if there were to be a pathway sidewalk from this point to this point, what would that actual cost be to install? And that would be what I would like to see the contribution be.
And we'll look at that, absolutely.
Okay. And I think those are the only comments and questions I have right now.
Okay, Sean?
I think you guys have kind of covered already some of the questions maybe. I think you're moving in the right direction. This was a lot easier on the eyes than last iteration, and I appreciate that. And, you know, when you look at density, I guess there's two ways to look at it. You can look at it based on its current zoning, which would yield a number of 34, but I prefer to look at it through the lens of the master plan, which I think is how Brian is assessing this. That's how he's getting to 43 units as opposed to 34, which is the other number that's floated around. Because, you know, to me, I think you skip the process. You could go and rezone this property to, you know, the residential A, future land use, to get to the 1 1/4, or we can just assume that because you would be meeting the intent of the master plan, that you would get that rezoning and just use that number and kind of cut to the chase, which is kind of how I would look at it. So I'm looking at the number as being 43, and I think that's a reasonable number to use based on the analysis done by Brian and his group. I thought 60 was far too many. I think I could probably be comfortable with a number that starts with 5. And you're pretty close. Well, you are at a number that starts with 5. So there are a couple lots when I look at this that just my preference would be to maybe pluck 1 or 2 of them out and spread some things around to improve kind of the view shed into the development. I mean, you're going to come in on either of those 2 streets and stare at the side of 4 homes, 2 at the north, 2 at the south. And when you drive by, you're largely going to look into the middle of that project. So I guess I would like to see if you're going to pull 1 out or 2 out, pull them out of that area and really spread those units out and kind of try to get, and I guess it would be, switch screens now. I think it's lot 48 or unit 48 that kind of butts up to one of the units in the 50s. And I don't like it when the corners get real close like that. And then I think unit 41 is just sort of oddly in that corner and could be rotated around, you know, to the east, to kind of line up maybe more with 37 and kind of spread that out a little bit. I mean, I'm getting really nitpicky, but I like the fact that you stopped, you know, before you went any further toward the gas well. I think really the appearance of this is going to be half the battle, what it looks like from the road. I mean, we all live somewhere. We've all chosen to live there because that's the way we want to live, the kind of product we want to live in. And so from an aesthetic standpoint, if you can make it look good from the passerby, you know, that's really, I think, where we need, from an aesthetic standpoint, that's where we need to get. So passing by, it's going to look, you know, inviting. I live across the street, and I wish my neighborhood's landscaping looked like this. There's quite a distance from some of those homes that back up to Pontiac Trail. and there's just a fence there, and there's sort of sparse landscaping. I would like to see, something more like what you're offering across the street. So I think this is going to be probably a little nicer to look at and pass by, not just from a cool, I don't want any of my neighbors to give me a lawn job, but I just, with all the landscaping and the treatment the way it is, I mean, both sides are going to look nice, but this looks like it's got quite a bit more planting and
We hope it's a new standard. Our land planner's very creative, and we believe it'll be very attractive.
I think when kids go to school and they learn how to color between the lines, they don't realize how much money they can make taking plans and making them look really nice. So the first, you're like, wow, look at all that color. That's amazing. But they can't. So kids keep coloring between the lines. I think that some of the benefits, as far as kind of how you would measure them, there's a little bit of subjectivity to it. I would like to see the pathway that we're talking about put in. I hate the idea of just putting money aside for pathways, because tomorrow it costs more than it did today, and a year from now, 5 years from now, we chase our tail, and then pretty soon there's a gap. You put 5% more than you thought it would take, to put the pathway in, and by the time we put it in, it costs 10% more than we ever thought it would. And I guess you mentioned that you don't have the right-of-way. That's a problem.
Yes.
And there's only a handful of properties where you have to get right-of-way in order to put this.
We'd need help. I mean, I can't, I don't believe we can go across Steve's property and put a sidewalk in.
No, you would need an easement,
Yes.
or he would have to dedicate right away, and Steve shouldn't dedicate any right away unless someone's paying him for it.
Yes.
It's his property, right? But there are some people who may want to see a sidewalk. They may want to be able to get on their bike or take a walk and be able to go somewhere.
Yes.
And this would give them that opportunity. Those handful of neighbors, it would be between you and where the city sidewalk picks up further to the south. So I think you're going in the right direction. I would like to see the number come down a couple. But I guess I'm focused more on the 43 rather than 34 for future density based on the analysis done by McKenna.
John, if I could add in
Go ahead.
to what Sean said, I guess I was not even considering saying, yes, I'd like to see the path put in there, but after listening to Sean, I would agree that, just put it in. And you don't have...
And we can't. The only reason I'm offering that is I physically can't put it in even if I want to. So I'm not opposed to doing what you're asking. I don't own the land to put it on. It's in people's front yards.
And I guess so you could make the effort. You could knock on some doors
Yes.
and see if you can give someone a free sidewalk.
Yes.
And really what you'd be doing is putting a free
Yes.
walkway in front of them. Some may love it, some may tell you to get off their porch.
Yes.
One quick question. Are you showing, the way this is laid out, are you showing 20 feet between units? Bless
Yes.
you.
Yes, there's a bump out for a overhang of about 2 feet. So it's 20 feet from the structure to the structure, and then there's a 2-foot cantilever on a bay window that would encroach into the 20 feet.
So off the ground, but overhang the foundation.
Yes.
So
Yes.
okay.
And that would, that's only on one side. So it does it. I mean, they're not two bay windows looking at each other.
So one more quick question. What percentage do you anticipate picking the loft option, the half-story up option of these, as a rule, like in the industry?
5 or 10% maybe.
Okay. Is it possible in Steve's backyard to have those 4 or 5 units restricted from having the story and a half, so it keeps the scale of that down behind him?
Yes.
You're going to own the property.
Absolutely.
And it's reasonable that you would expect it to, but you're going to keep the scale of it down if you keep it a ranch product, and he won't be looking at a second story.
It'll be a one story. We would absolutely do that if that was appropriate.
I think that would be a good offer to keep the scaling down. So, okay, thanks.
Okay, before we move to Robert, I just have one question. It says that you have you're looking at 1,800 to 2,500 square foot. What do you think the cost of these would be? What do you think the numbers?
Tell me when the approval is, when we can start land development. Our costs have gone up and come down and gone up again, and then we've come down. So it's really a function of land development and construction.
Have some idea what these houses are cost.
400s to 500s.
Okay, 400 to 500. Okay.
And probably won't get into the 4s. It'll probably be 5 or more.
Yeah, probably
And then,
more.
What we have found is, no matter how nice we do the base selections, it's a last house before the home, so to speak. And the people tend to option a lot of extra things in here. So they want basements, they want stuff we don't put in there as standard, because it's their last, it's a retirement house. And so when I tell you the prices, they wind up being at least 30% more because of what people have asked.
Kind of close, I'm just
Yes.
trying to think of it. Okay, Robert, go ahead.
Okay. So, I guess to pick up kind of with some stuff there, I was also thinking about this in terms of using the 43 as the base number, in which case the current 54 proposed is about a 25% bonus. So in my head, I'm sitting here weighing, are the benefits you're laying out here worth 25%? Some other factors that feed into that, which I appreciate the clarification on the traffic study, that the road treatments are assuming full single-family use, but
Yes.
we're anticipating lower anyway.
I can guarantee we won't have single-family traffic.
Right, I wouldn't want to see it like that the road improvements were based on
Yes.
that assumption if it wasn't deed restricted, which I'm not in favor of deed restricting it, but.
Thank you.
So based on that, to me, that kind of accounts in a way for part of your density bonus in my head, because when you talk to people in this township about, what's some of their number one concerns, it's traffic. And if we're looking at, if the numbers you put in the traffic plan are to be, whatever expected to be those reductions, then to me that's a benefit, because even though we're getting these additional units, the impact in the way that most people are going to care about experiencing this product, not living in it, is negligible in that sense. Moving on from that strict piece of density and traffic, going back here to sidewalks. Thank you. So on the southern edge pathway going down, I also would be in favor, if at all possible, of simply having it built at the same time that you are doing the pathway along your frontage. It saves on equipment mobilization costs, and also saves us from continuing inflation if we wait longer. As far as easement acquisitions, I don't know, Leslie, when we calculate contribution costs, do we assign a value for easement acquisitions as part of that process?
Sometimes if we do the comprehensive estimate.
Because that's I guess that's what I'm saying, is if you're thinking about this in terms of if we don't build it, we're going to save money, I would be asking that the contribution account for that, so you wouldn't really be saving in that sense. And looking at the map there, it appears as though the only property you would need acquisition to acquire an easement from would be property that belongs to the association for the subdivision you'd be connecting to, Mr. Kuntz's property, and one other. So
I think that's right, yes.
It seems like it's an approachable thing, and I don't know whether it's appropriate or not, but I wouldn't be opposed to, if you need some coordination help from us in dealing with those. Personally, I'm not opposed to that, because I said I'd like to see it actually built. On the northern edge, I know this is just a design charade, it's not the actual engineering documents, but I did notice a change where the previous version showed clearly that you could see the path that did cross the Davis Creek, and this version of the drawing doesn't quite seem to show that as clearly, though one of your slides did. So I guess, are we still planning on that portion being actually built? And if not, I would expect, again, an actual cost contribution to be put in.
So it would be built, but it would be in the right-of-way, so we're not doing a whole separate bridge structure over the stream.
I don't know if there's room there, though. That'll have to be looked at pretty closely.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because the way that this looks, it's almost like you're directing pedestrian traffics to between a guardrail
and a road.
and then a culvert drop-off. So that area would need to be looked at pretty closely.
Yes. It'd be on the inside of the guardrail, the traffic side of the guardrail. Whether we, well,
we have to
I'm
get approval for that. But
I'm just telling you what it's designed. I'm not saying it's acceptable.
Yeah, so that's something that I think I would like to see some clearer answers on when we get to the next phase here. Beyond that, I guess My other thing is the ongoing, maintenance of the pathways and things, just that, it'd be very clear that I think we would want that to be maintained by the association,
Yes.
and that there be some sort of obvious disclosure to anyone buying into the development, so we don't have people coming back to us and complaining that, hey, now I'm responsible for taking care of all this stuff that the public gets to use. So just making sure that's clear. And then when we get to talking about the oil well, do we have, are there, I don't know is there an actual end date on that lease, or is it perpetuity until they decide they're done using it?
Number 2.
And then whenever that may be, I guess, do we have some sort of end-of-life plan? Like, is this thing just going to sit there abandoned? Do we have some sort of remediation that's going to happen, and who's going to be responsible?
So I can share state regulations. That's the ultimate termination of the leases. They say we're done pumping, there's no more oil, and they have to go to Eagle, and Eagle has a shutdown procedure, which we have nothing to do, that says you can't abandon it until you do these 50 items.
Okay,
so that's a state
so it would be
that's
the
a state
responsibility
regulator
of the leaseholder working
Yes.
with Eagle.
Yes.
And then in that scenario, once they say, okay, we're done with the lease, does that surface area then go to the association to be considered as part of the rest of this open space, or how does that transition work?
Mark Chickerell. Yes, it would be given to the association.
Okay. All right. I guess that is all I have for now then. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Patty?
Yeah, well, my first concern is Steve Kuntz's house, because when I look on the aerial, they are pretty close to their, to the south property line that you would be having. So I think Sean had an excellent idea of keeping that at a ranch level. I thought that was really good, Sean, by the way. But yeah, if you would get with the Kuntzes and see what kind of screening and how you can help them, because they have a beautiful new home, and I don't blame them. So that would be my major thing, to work with them to see how you can help them, or how you can further screen that and make them happy. Second of all, I actually like it, and I've said that the last time you came, and I agree with Sean. I looked more at the 43 to be the approved, but the actual amenities that you're providing, I could probably go in the early 50s.
Okay.
And that's everything else that's been said I'm pretty good with. And
I appreciate that
well, only because I've seen this plan like 10 times now. So.
Well, and-
I don't have a lot to say. And Jim, I felt so bad I could hardly contain my tears. So, but that's not, I'm just saying that, I said it before, I think it's a product that's needed in our township. And I'm aging, so I get it.
We'll be happy to put your name on it. One of those. We're here not just to fight for another home, but to be able to bring together the benefits that I think are important to the community, and then maintain this project and put the maintenance of that path and in the road frontage on less units is not. At some point, it doesn't make any economic sense for either the people moving in there or the people doing it. So, I'm not fighting for density because I'm going to retire on one more unit or two more units. We have to weigh what benefits, and if there aren't enough benefits, then you shouldn't approve anything. If there are enough benefits, I have to have enough homes to be able to pay, $400,000 or $500,000 of stuff that nobody's going to pay me for, but is part of the project. And so I'll get credit for it, but we have to be able to spread that over enough units, which is my push from going to 80 down to 54, and I understand I'm hearing maybe a couple more, but we're not able to come here and say if we get 40 units, we can move forward, and I think that's important, not as a threat, but we feel that at 54 is the number of units, and if it's 53, I guess it's 53 or 52, but if we're going to put in the sidewalk and we're going to cross it and we're going to do all the other things that we're committing to do, it's whether it's important to you or not, it's very important in terms of the economic viability of it, and nothing's worse than a subdivision, a community that fails because you had to sell the houses for more than anyone would pay. And we think that we want to provide opportunities for residents who are here, so we think we've got it figured correctly. So I'll end of sermon.
Okay, Michelle, you want to add anything?
Yeah, I was just curious, the 43 lots that, I know we've got the formula, and is he still here? Tom? Yeah. We also have to consider sewer taps. So depending on how built up and how built out we're getting, I mean, do we have enough to go 54 here? I guess, so that's just another addition to the pot for homes, you know. So we would love to say, oh yeah, go ahead, put 54 on, but if we're sewer tapping getting close to what our sewer plant can handle, it's not going to matter.
REUs are in many communities, not this, I don't know, but many times with age targeted, not even age restricted, are a different allocation for REUs.
Home is still a home.
Well, it's less bedrooms, and the tenancy is part-time. So, I mean, we have.
There is sewer capacity available if the board chooses to.
Okay. That was one of my questions. So I was just
allocate it to these development. Right now, Eagle doesn't let us use a flow calculation.
Does not. Okay.
No, not at this time. So we have to use a per unit count.
Okay.
So.
Yeah. And then going to a retiree home now. I don't know how, I mean, this looks really pretty and you can look at the pictures and say ooh and ah, but my biggest complaint are the streets aren't wide enough and there are people still parking on the streets, and that was our fault probably as a township board that didn't go in and figure that out beforehand. So I'd like to put that little note in there. And then parking over the sidewalk if you park in the driveway, because even though we are retirees, we have a truck that doesn't fit in our garage, so now we're parked over the sidewalk. So just things like that you don't realize till you get there. And even sitting on this board, I mean, we drive by places and go, oh yeah, it looks really nice, but until you actually live there, some of these things are really a pain.
So we would propose a 27 back of curb to back of curb, which is a standard park on one side, the fire hydrants posted no parking, and we are proposing sidewalks on one side of the street, and we would make sure you have room to get your car in front, cars off the road and off the sidewalk before hitting your garage.
Okay. Yeah, that was my real concern, just because you can't tell by these, and I know we're in conceptual, but just wanted to.
Okay, I have a couple of quick questions that maybe you could answer for me. If you took 10 houses out of this, if you took 10 houses and got to 43, what would that change your side yards to? And it doesn't have to be, I'm just,
30,
you were at 20.
30s, 35, I don't know.
Okay. Here's my thought on these projects like that are really, really incredibly hard to develop. You put your money in the road, in the Pontiac Trail side, and the neighbors. You make sure they're very, very screened. Because I can guarantee you, not one person can drive in that driveway and tell you if there's 43 or 54 houses in that subdivision. They just won't be able to tell you that. Okay, they're not going to be looking at that. The best part about it is you're making the Pontiac Trail very, very decorative. And I think that's what you need to do. And also Mr. Kuhn's property. I mean, you need to really take extra time and make sure they're very shielded. I'm a little different on the sidewalks, okay? These sidewalks that we're putting in, everybody wants to put sidewalks in front of everything. And to Sean's point, he goes, well, down the road it's going to be more money. We have sidewalks that are 50 feet in front of places that are never going to be connected. And now we have to take care of them because they're on the main roads. So we're having to hire DPW people to go out and get in a trailer and drive all over the place and take care of 50 foot of sidewalk, and then jump back in the truck and drive to another place and take care of 50 foot of sidewalk. Unless you have a connection, it's ridiculous to put these sidewalks to nowhere, and that's what they end up. They end up in wetlands. We're going through a process right now where we have a bridge across the wetland. We have to repair it. It's hundreds, it's lots of money. I don't know how much. But until we connect these sidewalks, and if you were willing to put money into a fund and we start connecting sidewalks, or we start getting sidewalks on the interior of these projects to go to our bike trail. We have a connection that's a bike trail that crosses our entire township. Yet we're trying to get everybody to go down the main roads, which all the neighbors, they don't want the sidewalks in front of their houses. They've got these nice big lots on Pontiac Trail, and all of a sudden we come in and we try to put a sidewalk in front of it. They don't want it. And so my thought is, you could put the sidewalks inside the neighborhoods. That's great. And the people use them. But when you start getting them out onto the major roads and all they can do is go from this spot to this spot, and we just had one down on Grand River. It's the most dangerous thing I've ever seen. And we got a curb there, and it's just like, why do we do things like that? We need to try to figure out how to connect the sidewalks we have. And so for us to put, a sidewalk to nowhere again, it's going to put the township in a liability to take care of that sidewalk because it's on a main road and we'll have to take care of it. And I'm telling you, a lot of people don't want sidewalks in front of their big acreage lots. They just don't want it. I've heard it over and over. So I'm looking at the density on this thing. It's a little much, but this is an incredibly expensive piece to put together. I can tell you that right now by looking at it. This is going to cost you lots of money. I did some quick math. You'll make some money on this project. There's no question. You're not going to do it if you don't. I mean, and to Mr. Poles, you do a very good job. We know that. We know you're an incredibly good builder, and we like having you in the neighborhood. But the board doesn't like density, and I'm thinking that if you could get down a little bit of density, you'll probably have a better chance of getting it through. But as far as the amenities you're giving to the township and to the residents of that neighborhood, I think is good. And I think a lot of the amenities need to be targeted to the people who are going to live there, because why would they want to move there if we're putting all the amenities in other places? I mean, it's nice to have benefits throughout the township. It is. But I think projects also need amenities inside the project. And if you're doing an amazing job on Pontiac Trail, you get Mr. Kuntz' house completely shielded off where he's happy. I mean, I could get behind something like this. I mean,
can I get a straw poll on a number? Planning can't give me a number. I can't do it under 50.
Do that. I think it's up to you.
This was it. This was 54.
Well, I mean, if that's the bottom line, I don't know if you'll get that approved. I mean, you've heard the board. I mean, they're kind of steadfast on things.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to put ultimatums, but I mean,
you were sitting here listening, right?
Yes.
And you heard exactly what every person said.
Yes.
43. You heard that.
Yes.
Okay, so that's kind of a straw poll, if you ask me. I mean, they're kind of telling you.
And we can't do what we've offered with 43.
Well,
and
you could put it up. I mean, you could put it together. You could put, you could put the application. I don't know where it's going to go. You'll have to go through the process. I mean, to me, I don't get as hung up on the density on this project because if you take 3 houses out, I don't think you're going to see it in a setback. I don't know what that number is before you'll actually see it in the subdivision in a setback between houses. I don't know how many that would be. And I think that's the factor we're talking about, right? Setbacks between houses. I mean, that's the problem with density.
I guess it's one of the symptoms.
That's where it's really unappealing, when they're too close together. And, I've said before, you put these houses so close together, you don't even put windows in the sides of the houses because you're looking right into your neighbor's house.
This will sound self-serving, but as a practitioner who's done this and sells to the people who move in, the proximity is one of the things that the residents are looking for from a safety, security. I like to leave, and I don't want to be on a big acreage parcel. I had a big acreage parcel. I like knowing my neighbors, and yes, you don't want to be 5 feet apart. That's ridiculous. But 40 or 50 feet apart is single family separation, and it's been our experience that we don't hear from the homeowners. We wish we had more room. They love the inside. They're living on the inside of their houses. They're not outside in their yard because it's all common area maintenance. So they're going to their house wherever they go or their vacation. So I'm happy to look at all of that.
John,
Shaw, you want to, oh, I'm sorry, Lisa, go ahead.
You brought up a good point, and when you mentioned about, sidewalks and required, if it's along the main road, we're required to maintain them, and that being a concern. And I usually do agree with Sean, and I did tonight, about having, put the sidewalk in. But I guess I'm trying to balance a few things in my head. If one of your amenities to the community is that you have these meandering paths, I can pretty much guarantee you do not, the people who live in that neighborhood do not want somebody from outside of their neighborhood driving, parking in front of their houses, to Michelle's point, parking in front of their house so that they can go walk and meander through these pathways. So if you don't have the sidewalk connect your development to the north or the south, then how do you expect people to actually, for the entire township, if this is what you're presenting, how do you expect the people of the township to really utilize these as township amenities? Or, that's kind of what you've been talking about. So if you don't have that sidewalk, to John's point, then why do you need to invest all the money in providing those amenities with the park benches that you're saying, and the picnic tables and these maintained pathways? Then do you really need to do that? I guess that kind of throws a wrench into your overall thought process, because it threw a wrench into my thought process. Well, wait a minute, if the rest of the township can't really access this, if you don't have the sidewalk, why are you investing money in that and then saying that that's a township-wide benefit or a community-wide benefit, not just a, subdivision benefit?
So I'm reading your ordinances, and I'm reading what it says you'd like on developments, and I'm reacting to that. And then I've upgraded the accoutrement, the glitz, the glitter of your Pontiac Trail. If you don't want sidewalks on Pontiac Trail, and you want to, what I can't say is, but I can't do both. I can offer either one at your direction. So I can put them in and have our association maintain them if you want, or I can not put them in and contribute the money so you can connect sidewalks elsewhere in your township, which is not something I can advise you on. But I've offered both of those. As my community benefit, I've said I'll put them in and I'll make them very glorious, and I'll connect, and I will connect to the south if I can get right of way. And if I can't do that, I'll offer the amount of money that it would have cost me to put it into the south, to address yours and Robert's concern of a meeting or two ago of you got a public amenity that nobody can get to. So ergo, the offer of 1,200 lineal feet of sidewalk. So I can't put sidewalks all through the township, but that is the biggest concentration of single-family homes near us. Unless I go across the street in Oakland County, Road Commission said, no, you don't. So
I probably did not express myself very clearly, so I apologize for that. So I guess my problem now is that John has brought this point up, we have sidewalks that we would have to maintain. So why would we want, I think this is what John's point
Another
is.
one.
Why would we want to have 1,200 feet of additional sidewalk that we would have to maintain that is off of your frontage? So I think that's what...
If it doesn't connect.
If it doesn't connect.
Well, we'll connect to us, but then there's half a mile or more to get to Blake's New Orchard, which is where I would put sidewalks if I were a commissioner. That's where everyone's going to want to walk to.
Right.
But I don't get to be the township. One day, maybe.
I guess my thought was, now my brain has been, I'm torn, and I'm now kind of in your thought process of which direction do you want?
I don't want to put it in because I think there's a better, this is Jim Clark, Lyon Township resident now. I think there's probably better places to put it than just connecting to that subdivision to the south.
Right.
But I don't have the context of everywhere you need connection points. When I talked...
Could you lose a couple of units and then reduce the number of the number of park benches and gazebos that you had planned within there that were going to be usable to?
Yes. Okay. Yeah, if we could agree on 52 units, and I will either contribute in and either I'd like to have the sidewalk in front of our development, but I don't have to. I mean, that's up to you. That would be maintained by us. So it would not be a commitment for the township.
Seems to be going a different way than I had anticipated. If you leave this alone, so you started this with it.
Yes.
What's the number? You said
54.
What's the number? Well, that's your number.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, well, you asked, so I'm...
You're asking us what the number is,
Yes.
and you're saying this is sort of like your point. This is as far as we can go.
It's not an ultimate, but yes.
Right. I guess I would like to see all the things that you're offering here stay and try to figure out a way to get all of these things and a number that we can all agree on and move this thing along rather than trying to take away from this plan. Because at a point, then you're still chasing a benefit for density.
Yes.
So if this number gets cut by 8, you're still over the 43, and we're still trying to haggle over, well, what does the extra 2 or 3 units equal?
Or you just do single family, which
So-
isn't a
so
threat,
try
but
to
it
make
is, it's in Lyon Township. It's a, anything in Lyon Township is developable. This is what I think makes the most sense to do in Lyon Township, because there's not a lot of it being done, and we love it when there's not a lot of competition. And that's an honest statement. And we think there's a real need for it. But it does require some help from the township at 0.7 units per acre versus 1.25 to do all the extra stuff. And to your point, Mr. Dolan, I don't think if you drive by, you're going to say, oh, would have been better if it was one less unit, because it's going to be all contained within itself.
Yeah, I agree with John that you'll drive through here and you won't know how many units. I mean, I think for us, though, at the same time, we still have to arrive at a number.
Yes.
So the people who send us here to make these decisions are going to say, well, why'd you give, Clark this number instead of that number when he only qualified for X? Why'd you give him X plus 25%?
Exceptional design and implementation.
Right, and charm, of course.
That's overstated.
So as much as I understand what you're saying, we still have a formula to follow. We still have rules to follow, and so we have to still try to find a balance. So,
but your ordinance does let you break Brian's rules. Your ordinance says you don't have to listen to Brian. It says you have the discretion to not follow Brian.
That is true. Right. And so
if you think it's a good project.
Yeah, at conceptual, we usually don't get pinned down on a number. I mean, I appreciate the fact.
We didn't get there.
No, you haven't. I've been to planning 3 times,
and
they said...
all I'm saying is you wanted a straw poll. I think most people said that
43.
They thought the base was 43, not 34. Majority of people seem to use the base number of 43, not 34. And I'm not trying to.
I said 35.
Chris apparently has arrived at 35. I guess all I'm saying is that's just. I brought up another way of looking at it, and I agree with the way Brian's looked at it, but that doesn't mean that those who said 34 would maybe agree too. So all I'm trying to say is that tonight, I think you're hearing from most of us that 43 is a number that we would use to start. And I think even a handful of us said that we'd be comfortable with a number that began with a 5. Maybe not 54, maybe it's 50. And maybe you wouldn't be able to tell if it was 54 or 50 driving by. I certainly probably wouldn't. But at least then we're holding you closer to the number, because the next guy who comes in the door is going to say, well, while none of these, I guess, are binding on other projects, you know how you guys all use it.
You can't have another project with 79% open space. I mean, it is truly unique.
Until we do.
Until you do.
Right.
That's true.
And I think we do.
Do you? 79% open space?
Irwin's, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, the Orchard's got a lot of open space.
I don't get to harvest, do I?
So, I mean, just to end, for me, I'm comfortable with a number probably between 50 and 54. Probably closer to 50 than 54. I'd like you to, for that number, I would like you to leave everything in, and I'd like you to probably concentrate, for me, if you're going to take a few units out or a couple of units out, somewhere in the middle when you're looking in. You're worried about the view shed, you're worried about the appeal from the road. Spread them out a little bit and take them out of the center between, the area between the two drives in. And, again.
And then pull them off.
Pardon?
Pull them further in, yes.
Yeah, right. Gotcha. Spread them a little bit, and and so that's, I don't know.
Thank you.
Okay.
And I like sidewalks, and I think it's ridiculous. I don't think we're responsible for going around and fixing all these sidewalks.
Yes, we are.
Our attorney tells us we are.
We are.
Why am I
Your
supposed
attorney has told you are, but that's left for another night.
Right,
So-
because it's in the county's right of way, and we don't own them. But, who's going to fix them, I guess, if we don't? So
Well, I'm telling you, we do.
Mr. Chickerell's going to fix them. He's raising his hand.
Fixing everything here. I think the pathway is better left for another night.
Yeah.
Where we have a study session on the entire issue.
Okay.
What we want to do with that.
Right.
I just wanted, if I could, just one comment, possibly, and this is really sort of guessing. I'll read it out here for one second. Just from a buyer's perspective, whether it's, in my mind, and I'm a layperson, and you guys have a high-end, high level of working knowledge here, and so I'm not going to take more than 10 seconds because as a layperson, that's all I should probably get at. But from a buyer's perspective, it seems like they're going to buy because they like what they see and they want to live there. And whether it's 52 or 55 or 60 or 54, they won't care one bit. They're going to like what they see, and they want to live there, and they see themselves there for the next, 25 or 30 years. And so that's, in my mind, the essence of the whole thing, again, in a really simplistic way. So I just wanted to add that. And I also wanted to thank everybody for the hard work that you guys have put in, including Robertson Brothers on both ends here. We, as a seller, really appreciate it.
Thank you for your time.
Okay, do you think you got an idea?
Well, we'll either see you at the planning commission or we won't. But that's on you.
Yes. Yes, I have gotten all the information I feel I can
There
garner
you
from
go.
this board. Thank you.
Let's move on.
So I know we've beaten the connectivity thing to a dead horse, but you brought up something that caught my attention, that you pointed out sidewalks on only one side of the interior streets.
Yes.
But the ordinance is written to require it on both sides of the internal streets, so...
Then if that's the ordinance, it'll have both.
No, you've got discretion.
Okay, all right, I'll ask you questions later, but...
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Thanks.
All right, we're going to move on to consideration of approval of the Fifth Amendment to the Second Amendment sewage disposal agreement with Lyon Wastewater, and to authorize a supervisor and the clerk to sign. This is basically where we're finishing the west beds, and that's all it is. If you have any questions about it, it's just finishing them up. And Lyon Wastewater is going to do it.
Are you ready for a motion?
Unless there's any questions, I'm ready.
I'll move to the consideration of approval of the Fifth Amendment to the Second Amended Sewer Disposal Agreement with Lyon Wastewater, and to authorize the supervisor and the clerk to sign.
I will second that motion.
All right. Yeah, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Awesome. Okay, millage discussion.
Okay.
Patty, you want
Yep.
to start out here?
So I wanted to bring it to the board's attention that, after this last tax year, that I will be rolling the last millages for both the fire and the police. So I want to get ahead of it so that we have many discussions, or maybe set up workshops. I don't know if it's just, if the need is only to renew, if they need added millage, but I don't want this to be at the 11th hour. And even though I really tried hard to get you guys to go longer on the fire millage, this is almost 6 mills we'll be asking our constituents to approve sometime in 2024.
If it's a renewal, you're saying?
Yes.
Yeah.
So we have,
Because it's a renewal of the new millage.
it would be and that would be, hang on. We rolled for the fire 2.3985, and for the police is 3.4204. Obviously, Headley will probably hit again this year, so I'm assuming those will be rolled back, pennies, but I'm sure that's going to happen. So I just want there to be no surprises, and these millages are important not only to our police and fire and what is going to be the protection of our community, and it also gravely affects our DDA, so because they collect on those millages. So I just wanted to make sure that, I'm not sure exactly how you guys want to approach this, but I don't want it to be something that is at the 11th hour, then you get mad at us and not having that discussion again. So it's at your pleasure how you want to move forward with these, but I wrote to you that there are 3 elections next year, and it's up to you.
Hey, you recommended subcommittees. Do you think a subcommittee for the police and a subcommittee for the fire millage? Is that what you're thinking?
I would think, because they're 2 different, they both have millages. I think that, this would be something that probably Ken and Reggie, or whoever Ken recommends to work with whomever you want, and then Les, and maybe whoever he wants. But, they need to put a plan. I would think that you would want to go out at least 10 years. I mean, I think that makes logical sense. I think it's easier for the voters too, and they know what's coming for the next 10 years. And it's hard. They've got to be able to build their force, and equipment, and I think that for my recommendation, I know Ken is looking at either building a new fire station, which I think we need, and some remodels. We might want to go out to bond that, separate from millage. And that's what most communities do. I mean, still, if you look at communities around us, we're still kind of low for both. For sure for fire, but we got to keep up. We have a lot of residents. Their home is usually their most, largest asset that they have, and our children. I mean, that's what's important to us. So we need our police department to help protect us, and we need the fire department to, watch over us for fires and all kinds of things like that. So
what are you looking for, Patty? You looking for put together a committee?
That would be my suggestion, and I'm happy to serve on both because I have the money. I can guide with the money, but it's really, or do you just want me to work with them, and I can do that also, and bring back.
I feel like you should be involved with.
Well, I have to, because you won't know the money.
Continuity, right?
Yes, but, I mean, I'm very willing to do that, but.
How many would you need?
Well, you can't go over a quorum.
No, I know, but you want that many? You want up to 3?
I'd say just maybe another person, if that's acceptable. Just somebody want to, help me with the police, and somebody help me with the fire, or I can do it myself with them also, but it's up to you. I mean, we've got to start talking about this.
Yep.
And get our heads around it, because that's major decisions that have to be, decided on, and
I think it's great that you brought it up now and put it in the packet so the public can look at it and understand what's coming ahead and be prepared, so I appreciate that.
I mean, in the
I
next.
can help you with the police if you are looking for
Sure,
somebody.
Lisa, that'd be great. Yeah.
I can help with the.
You want to? Sure.
I mean, unless if other people want to do it, if my availability gets in the way.
Is everybody good with Lisa and
Well,
Sean?
as long as.
Yeah, I mean, I'm
I can
assuming
move
the
forward.
idea here is that this would, you'd come back with, a proposal, with ample time beforehand that then we can sit down as the larger group and.
You'll have your
bounce things
say-so,
around
Robert.
and-
Don't worry about that.
Yeah.
So everybody good?
Yeah, I mean, is it okay to have 3 and 3? If Patty's on both,
Yeah.
and then 2 people are on one and 2
Yeah.
people on the other, and that
As long
way.
as it's not a
It's just,
quorum.
right, I mean, as long as we're not, do you
Yeah.
object to that?
No.
I'm just saying, that
I
there are
don't.
people involved.
I object.
Well, then you're out, buddy.
Nope.
Hey, who's in charge here?
No, but obviously you
No.
appoint the committees.
No,
but,
I'm good. If you guys want to put 2
I'm
on,
just
I'm
saying,
good.
like, to me, if more, I don't,
It's up
if
to
somebody
you.
else wants to be
No.
involved, they
Yeah, I
can.
got you.
This is the future. You've
Yep.
got to look at 10 years out. You have to see the growth of our community, which I don't really see.
Okay, so
Slowing down
let's,
and
so we
so-
got Sean in the fire, Lisa in the police. Somebody else want to go?
I mean, I'm fine to do either if we want another person on it.
That's if we want another one. It's up to you guys. If you don't, you don't. If you do, you do.
Well, I can do police if you want.
All right, so there we
Okay,
go.
so
We got
Chris wants to do police. and
Chris is
fire.
on police and fire.
Sounds good.
Okay, so
Okay,
we got
good?
Lisa and Chris is going to do fire.
Yep.
Police.
Oh, please, got it, okay.
Oh, police,
Please.
yeah.
And where's Chris?
Thanks for bringing this up.
Yep, you're welcome. And Robert, you're going to help with the fire, right?
Sure.
And I talked to Ken, and Ken did a lot. Well, we did a work, and we have a lot of numbers already for fire. So, but there's still, yeah. So give us a chance to have a couple committee meetings, and then.
Yeah, well, and however you think the schedule-wise,
But you got to wear pants.
eventually I'll be back in pants. Yeah.
Okay.
While it's,
So I'll send out some dates to see if we can start meeting. And we want to get this going.
Okay, are we good to move on then?
Yep.
We good?
I got my little commitments.
All right, we're going to move on to the resolution to approve the transportation reimbursement program. And we can only get 30,000 because that's what we budgeted.
Yeah.
That's all we
It's
get.
better than zero.
I
get
thought
it.
it had been more, Brian, and I thought it was higher, but
Yeah, we
it
looked.
showed in the budget.
Yep.
Yeah.
But that's all we get because that's what we were paying.
They'll
Are we
reimburse you.
allowed to amend our budget?
You got a motion?
Next year.
It
That should be a
explicitly
good thing to
said
do
no.
right now.
Okay.
I'll make a motion that we approve Resolution 2023-12.
Support.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, any other
One
comments?
other thing with that, just
Go
make
ahead.
sure that we get the application, everything all filled out and everything submitted timely. Brian, are you going to work with them on that?
I can help whatever Michelle needs on that.
Well, I'll give this to you tomorrow and then whatever else you need.
Sounds good.
Okay, anyone else have anything else? Anyone? All right, then, all new business has been completed, and we are going to adjourn.
9:06 PM.
That's good.